Proteins are covered in Chapter 5. We're not going to look at anything specific with the type of sport, but when we talk about individual sports, we will look at protein needs and carbohydrate needs specifically for those sports in just a bit. The basic structure of an amino acid, or of a protein, would be an amino acid. And proteins have a nitrogen on it, so it has carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. The illustrations that you'll see will have an amino group, which is the NHH, and a carboxyl group, which is the carbon with the double bond to oxygen and a bond to the OH. Figure 5.3 shows you the structure of proteins. Its primary structure is the chain of the amino acids. The secondary structure is the folding that occurs because of the attraction between the charges. The tertiary structure is basically the folding of the coiling around its own shape. And the quaternary structure is the interaction of different chains. The classification of proteins would be either by number of amino acids, di meaning 2, tri meaning 3, oligo, I think that's 3 to 10, and poly would be a long chain. The composition and quality would be related to, well, let's look at composition. Complete means that it has all of the essential amino acids. Incomplete meaning that at least one is missing. We'll look at quality in the next slide. When a food is classified as high quality, it is a complete protein, and that means all the essential amino acids are included, and it is really digestible. High quality proteins are usually developed or from animal derived foods. The complete proteins include protein, poultry, meat, fish, dairy, such as milk, yogurt, and cheese, and also soy. Grains are not complete protein sources with the exception of quinoa, which is an interesting grain. It's definitely more available than it was 5-10 years ago. Complete proteins can be obtained by combining complementary sources such as rice and beans. And so vegetarian athletes need to be really vigilant in terms of how they vary their diet and make sure that they have complementary proteins to be able to make sure that they're getting all of their essentials. A low quality protein is a protein that is more lacking in the essential amino acids, and we tend to find our low quality proteins in plant form. That does not mean that they are not good for the diet. They definitely are called low quality primarily because they're incomplete. The complementing or complementary protein combinations as shown here, where you can have an animal product, but if you have grains and legumes or legumes and nuts, if you combine those foods, you can definitely be sure that you're getting your essential amino acids. So grains and legumes, or in legumes and nuts, both will be good ways of getting your full amino acids, and you can add nuts and seeds to so many things. Now you'll see that energy is not listed on this picture. We'll have it on the next one, but protein does supply some energy, but it's a very small contribution and it's not a primary role. The body is made primarily 45% of protein, and the structure, movement, transport, hormones those are all cell signaling, those are all functions of the protein. So here's just another way of looking at it. A couple other things here. I have energy source there, but I think if you're a visual person, that figure 5.5 gives you a good perspective of the role of protein. Muscle proteins are continuously turning over, and so there needs to be a balance between muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. While exercise is often thought of in relation to breakdown, a benefit of exercise is also an increase in muscle protein synthesis. So it is beneficial in that regard. You'll see that the amino acids are available, are actually transported in the bloodstream. The amino acid pool is visually shown in this picture in the center, the box in the center, and it just identifies sources of amino acids, where amino acids go, and also somewhat how they can be used. So the dietary protein is digested into those amino acids. There's also turnover. The liver can make some amino acids, and how it's removed is through nitrogen compounds like ammonia, can be used for energy in the citric acid cycle, and it can be excreted in the urine. And so one of the things that a high protein diet does is it increases the need for fluid intake in the body. Nitrogen balance is a good indicator of the status of nitrogen and, more importantly, protein intake. As you recall, that protein is unique because it carries a nitrogen. And if we know the protein consumed, we can identify the nitrogen that has been consumed, and then evaluate how it's excreted and do a comparison between what someone is consuming versus what somebody is excreting. We excrete it in our sweat, our feces, and it can be measured. If somebody is in positive nitrogen balance, that means that they're in a building phase. Now, if you recall back to the beginning work, the term RDA was identified, and the RDA, or recommended daily allowance, is only 0.8 grams per kg. This means that 99% of the individuals are going to be able to be absolutely fine with that much protein. The percent of total calories would be equal to 10 to 20. Now, athletes have been pooled in this particular slide, and as we move later on into the semester, we'll look a little bit more deeply at certain types of athletes in terms of, is it an endurance athlete or a strength athlete, and those values will be tweaked a little bit. However, generally speaking, we're going to look at 1.2 to 2.0 grams per kg, or 15 to 35% of total calories contributed by protein. And we're trying to look for lean sources of protein and also high quality proteins. And when somebody is in heavy training, heavy energy requirements, that would be a special circumstance, or if they have an injury and they need more for muscle building, or they're ill, that would result in a greater requirement of protein.